So we started this podcast because we just kind of want to give you an in-depth look on what I'm doing in the Capitol and issues I'm working on, and then introduce you to some people I work with or some people of interest across the state. Our first guest is Speaker Lee Chatfield. We're going to bring in people from my community, the 93rd House District, and I hope you enjoy it. I think it's going to be great and straightforward, and if you have issues you want to talk about going forward or things you want us to take on, just give us a shout. So welcome to the podcast, and we're just going to talk about two issues right now. One, which is a bill package that we took testimony about this week, and the second, which is a bill package that's coming. The first one deals with microbreweries. Now, you know we have microbreweries all over Michigan. They've been a boon for small towns, especially DDAs and small businesses, small business owners. I think Michigan should be known as the beer state, and I think there's a competition. Maybe it's Michigan or it's North Carolina. We'll just say it's Michigan. We have a bill package, and this is House Bills 5341 through 5355 that increases the self-distribution limit and excludes taproom sales. And basically it frees up brewers to get more of their product out there. It's just going to be a boon for breweries. I've got one in my area, Glass Brewery in DeWitt. So excited to have a small business downtown, and I know they're very supportive of this bill package. So I testified on my bill in the package in reg reform, and I think it's going to have some support going forward. So that's one. Maybe you know about it, maybe you don't, but it's going to affect small businesses in a very positive manner. A second bill package I want to talk about is one that's not even out there, and I chair the Judiciary Committee, and we've been talking about decrim, the concept of decrim or decriminalization of low-level misdemeanors and turning them into civil infractions. Conceptually, it means, should we really be charging misdemeanors for certain very low-level crimes when instead they could be civil infractions and the public would still be protected? I've got a list, and some of the things you can be charged with a misdemeanor in the state of Michigan: a moped plate violation, a farm plate violation, a snowmobile equipment violation. Does this really sound like a misdemeanor to you? And I think people on both sides of the aisle would say no. So this goes into my conservative philosophy of proportional penalties and proper government action, and I think this is going to have support from Republicans and Democrats, and so I'm working on that package, and I'll keep you updated on that going forward. Again, we use the term decrim, and we don't believe that this would have any negative effects on the public safety. I just want to say this: if you get pulled over for one of these violations and you then get cited, could be a misdemeanor, so you have to show up in court, and you live in Indiana or you live in Kalamazoo and you have to drive all the way up north, imagine the burden on an individual. So we're also trying to reduce burdens on individuals for certain low-level misdemeanors. So these are just two things I'm working on. I also quickly want to point you to my Ovid Elsie Marauders jersey number 30. When you do this and you represent a whole district, it's important you just don't forget where you come from. This is where I'm from. I'm very proud of it. So thanks, guys. So I've got the Speaker of the House, Lee Chatfield, as my first guest of the Not Just Filler podcast. And Speaker has been a great leader in our House, but also a good friend, and just really enjoyed serving with him. It's not just all about policy. It's not transactional. He's very straightforward. He's honest. He'll tell you where he stands. So Speaker, thanks for coming onto my show. And we're just going to get right into it. So last week, the PEW, it's a national group, came in with some recommendations on, I guess you'd call it criminal justice reform or pretrial in the state of Michigan. Speaker, you stood up there with them and you said this is a positive. Can you just talk to us maybe your background on why you believe, criminal justice reform or relooking at the justice system is a good thing?
Well, first, Chairman Filler, let me say I'm honored to be your first guest on your show. I hope it goes big time someday, and I can say I was your first guest, so thanks for having me on.
You bet.
But criminal justice reform is something that Republicans and Democrats can reach a consensus on. And let's be honest, we live in an era of divided government, and we're going to have our political fights in 2020. We all know that. But the fact is we're either going to share in the blame for nothing getting done, or we'll share in the credit for things getting done in our state. We tackled criminal justice reform through the Judiciary Committee, which you know because you chair, early on because we feel it's the right thing to do for the people that we serve. Michigan's come a long way in the last 10 years with our economy, and there's a lot of jobs that are available, but we don't have people who are skilled to assume those jobs. We've got to do what we can to train the workforce, but also ensure people that are leaving the correction system actually have the tools to be successful and contribute to their communities and be effective. And as a young child, my father was a minister, and I saw the firsthand effects of his jail ministry when he would be in and working with people, whether in prison or whether in jail, and seeing the things that they go through on a daily basis. And this isn't about being tougher on crime or being softer on crime. This is about being smarter on crime, and it will save our state dollars in the end, but this is about actually serving people, giving them the tools so they can be successful, and not over-criminalizing our state.
Is there part of your conservative philosophy that goes into criminal justice reform, or are we looking at the justice system?
Absolutely. I think fundamentally, right, I think rights come from our Creator, and I think the purpose of government is to secure those rights. And that's the basic fundamental purpose of government. And if we're going to secure those rights, we need to ensure that our laws are fair and equitable and treat people that way, whether they're in the system or out of the system.
Like a concept of proportional penalties.
Absolutely. I think we need to look at and evaluate how we're over-criminalizing our citizens. And Michigan is an outlier in the country when you look at how we work our criminal justice system. And when you understand the fact that in the 1970s in our state, our criminal justice budget, corrections budget, was 3% of our general fund. Today, that's 20% of our general fund. And $1 out of every $5 out of our general fund budget goes to corrections. We can do better, and the people in our state deserve better, and that's why we're coming together as Republicans and Democrats to actually solve these problems for them.
Sure. Let me ask you a question. Being the Speaker during divided government, with you have a Dem governor and Republican House, Republican Senate, I mean, it's an interesting time in history. Can you just talk to us about your mentality and some of your work during that?
Well, first let me say I think this is one of the more politically divisive times we've ever seen in America. And I think it's important, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, that you need to care about the success of your state or your country more than you do about seeing the other party or administration fail. In 2020, we're all going to be pulled in different directions. Right, you're going to have Democrats pulling their base, pulling them to the left, and you're going to have Republicans pulling their base to the right. And,
sure.
And we're going to have our fights. We have our disagreements on some controversial issues that we'll fight about. But we can't let that stop us from reaching a consensus in other areas. And it's been a learning experience, I think, for a lot of people in Lansing. And at the end of the day, we have to put our state above our desire for competition to see the other party fail. And that's what we're doing in the state of Michigan.
Okay, yeah. I felt like our house led on that too, just kind of working across the aisle. I've got a book here. It's called The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, which I am going to gift to you because I know you told me you have not read it. Teddy is, I guess, a hero of mine because he came in and he spoke tremendous truth. Whether or not it angered people in his party or across America, he felt like he would do the right thing. And he was a conservationist, which was not something you talked about at that time. Mm-hmm. Have you ever studied Teddy? I know you're a man of history and you like reading about, Paul Revere, Joseph Warren, some of our heroes from the past. You have any thoughts about Teddy?
Yeah, so I've never read this book. You're a very learned man, Mr. Chairman. But I have read Leadership in Turbulent Times, okay, which does a study of 4 past presidents, and Teddy Roosevelt was one of them. But you're right. If there's one thing that sticks out to me about Teddy Roosevelt is he was a firebrand. This guy spoke the truth and wasn't afraid to take on his own party. And he was someone that was going to give you a consistent answer no matter what side of the issue you were on. Quite frankly, I think there's a lot of things we can learn from Teddy in today's political climate, because we're all going to feel the pressure from our different respective parties. And I'm a Republican because I believe in the platform and because I believe in the principles that our party stands for. But at the end of the day, I need to speak about my principles. And if I ever feel the party's strayed from that, to actually stand up and speak out. Amen. Those are lessons we can learn from Teddy Roosevelt. He was a principled man, and we could use a lot more people like him probably in today's politics.
Yeah, amen to that. All right, well, Mr. Speaker, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you, and I hope you enjoy the book.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Chair. It's a
my
pleasure.
friend. Thanks for your leadership.
Thank you.
So the third leg of our Not Just Filler podcast, I decided to talk about term limits, and I've done a couple Facebook posts about it, saying that these mailings that they've sent out to my entire district are, insane, and I do support the concept of term limits, and the people will decide. So one thing I want to take on is the concept that maybe the reason for these mailings, why are they sending them out? And I think it's to somehow make me, not just me, but other folks who they're attacking, fearful of talking about an issue. And it's also going to make people very cynical about the political process. But we talked about Teddy Roosevelt earlier, and he was never fearful of anything. He would just dive right in. He didn't care if it angered people, very powerful people, or his party. He felt like truth was truth to him. Was he always right? No, but no one is. And I really think that I was elected to serve the best I can and work on the best policy I can. And so I'm going to. So you're going to, if you haven't, this is a mailer that says politicians and diapers should be changed often and for the same reason. And it doesn't scare me at all, and it shouldn't make anybody fearful. And I think what people really want, not just in the 93rd District, but all over the state and all over the nation, is people in politics who will speak honestly about issues and speak in a nuanced manner. And so I really just want to take that on and take it head on and just say that, some of these mailers and these attacks, they just don't really move the radar for me very much at all. And we're going to continue having nuanced conversation. I will say that in Michigan, some folks back in the day did take advantage of term limits with the health benefits and the pensions. Those are all gone. Now we have very strict term limits. And so let's have a conversation. Is it working? Are we giving the best representation to people in the state of Michigan? And so just wanted to take that on, and I appreciate you listening and possibly watching. Going forward, if you've got questions or you want issues, you want us to talk about issues on the Filler podcast, shoot me a message. We're always listening. So proud to serve, and thanks for being a part of this.